to this evening's Executive Committee meeting. First of all, I would like to see if there's any apologies for absence.
If I may, Chair, I'll do a roll call just to confirm attendance, and that will also then confirm apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Could Councillor just state you're present when I call your name, please? Councillor Bialik.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Gassane.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Present.
Thank you. And if I may, Chair, I could just do a roll call of officers in attendance as well. So Chief Executive and Growth Director, Kareem Hassan.
Present.
Thank you. Director of City Development, Housing and Supporting People, Bindu Arjun.
Present.
Thank you. Director of Net Zero Exeter and City Management, David Bartram.
Present.
Thank you. Director of Finance, David Hodgson.
Present.
Thank you. Corporate Manager of Democratic and Civic Support, John Street.
Present.
Thank you. Service Lead, Environmental Health and Community Safety, Simon Lane.
Present.
Thank you. Service Improvement Lead of Benefits, Chris Buckman.
Beg your pardon, present.
Thank you. Policy Officer of Community Safety, Safeguarding and Equality and Diversity, Melinda Pogue Jackson.
Present.
Thank you. And Derek Phillips, Chair of the Independent Remuneration Panel.
Present.
Thank you. We have myself and Howard Bassett as Democratic Service Officers in attendance. And just to confirm, Chair, we also have Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Oliver in attendance as well. And I believe Councillor Ledbetter is on his way. And I can confirm we are fully quorate to proceed with no apologies.
Thank you, Mark. And just to say to Kevin and when Andrew arises, if you want to speak on any of the items, can you please just let Mark know in the chat room and I will call you before we enter the debate. Thank you. Okay, so item 2 is the minutes of the 3rd of November. Are you happy that I agree those, sign those off as accepted? Okay, I'll take that as agreed. Thank you. Can I remind members that they are to declare interests, any pecuniary interests, and to advise us in advance where we will put you in the virtual waiting room whilst we deal with those issues. Also, item 4, which is the local government access to information. There are no part 2 items on this agenda. There have been no public questions received. And before I go into item 6 in the business of the meeting, I would first like to let members know that Councillor Rachel Lyons has suffered a fall. She's been in and out of hospital. We wish Councillor Lyons all the well, and we will have an updated report for the full council on the 15th of December, and also Councillor Chris Buswell have not been too well. We wish them both a speedy recovery and hope to see them back soon, and we will give an update on the 15th of December. I'd like to just make a couple of comments before we start in relation to the lockdown that will end tomorrow, and it's been a difficult time for all of us. And I do notice that whereas Scotch eggs sales will no doubt increase remarkably over the next few days, we all have to be very careful. I don't know whether I'm lucky enough, but I receive quite a lot of information through the council offices with regard to the state of the situation with COVID-19 in the county and indeed Exeter. And first of all, I would like to publicly thank all the staff involved in the work of what we're doing in relation to combating the COVID-19, in particular, our health workers, carers, and everybody associated with that. There is still a lot to do, and just to remind everybody, it's not over yet. Most people, I don't know if you know it, but you can view a lot of the stats on the Devon County Council website. I do look at them regularly, and I receive regular updates. And as of the 28th of November, there was 136 cases in Exeter last week. And the cases per 100,000 was 103.5. The cases for the over 60s were 148.4 per 100,000. That is what I want to draw to your attention, that it is still climbing, although reducing. Those numbers are ratcheting up for the older generations, and in particular the over 80s. And although we've seen a decrease in the last 14 days, there is a capacity for this to increase. The Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital had the Nightingale section opened last Thursday, and that must be a reminder to us all that during the first spike, it wasn't used. It is being used now. And it is true to say that is because it's carrying on a lot of its other functions. We mustn't become complacent with regard of trying to curb the coronavirus. So I suppose my message to everyone is, it isn't necessarily a day of freedom tomorrow. It is a day of whereby we have to still be very careful in how we conduct ourselves in public places. And remember how we will be in tier 2, whatever we think of that, appropriate or otherwise, we have to follow the government guidance as it stands at the moment. If we are to enjoy our Christmas and to bring us through the new year, to keep Exeter safe, it is critical to our businesses that we do so, and also for the survival of us all. There is, of course, some good news, and that is the £100,000 that is being granted for some project work for the City of Literature. That is being obtained for the city. That is good news. And I was in discussions this afternoon with Councillor Wright and the Chief Executive, and obviously talking about 9 homes which have been built by our project company in conjunction with our HRA for 9 homes at Thorne Park Rise. These are much needed homes that we need in this city, and obviously other projects coming forward such as Vaughan Road and others are immensely important to people on our housing waiting list that we can help and support. So I wanted to end on a little bit of positive news there. And on that point, I will now go into item 6. And thank you for bearing with me on that, which is members' allowances. Now, this is an annual review that we have of the members' allowances, although for the last 3 years we haven't, because we had something put in place. We have an independent panel, which is chaired by Derek Phillips, and Derek Phillips is with us this evening. Derek, welcome to the meeting. And Derek, can you talk us through your paper and the recommendations, please? Thank you, Derek.
Yes, thank you. Just to remind members, it was 3 years ago in December 2017 that the panel recommended and the council accepted that we should be reviewing the allowances to reflect the position of Exeter as an urban non-unitary local authority. And we had obviously fallen behind sort of some equivalent cities like Gloucester, etc. And so you agreed a 3-year plan to bring this up to the same kind of level as other local authorities. This has now been achieved, and we now need to review what happens from next April, basically. And so the panel have met with a number of councillors, and I'd like to thank those who gave us their time to explain how things had changed. A little bit strange, of course, because COVID came into the middle of it, and so things were a little different. But thank you for those, and we had a good cross section of those members. And so from those, we have a number of recommendations for the council to consider. In particular, we looked at those two new positions you had, the chair of the Harbour Board and the chair of the Council Housing Development Advisory Board. And so we are recommending for those two areas, 25% of the SRA an SRA of 25% of the normal allowance in respect of the Harbour Board, and 50% in respect of the Housing Development Advisory Board. We think those should be reviewed after 12 months, because obviously nobody's quite sure what the amount of work that will be there involved. So our recommendation is that you should review those after 12 months. That was under 8.5 and 8.6. You will see under 8.7, there's a clause that's been inserted into recommended a clause be inserted into the carers allowances to take account of anybody that has special needs there, and the normal allowance would not be sufficient. So that's our recommendation, that you should include that on that side as well. We did look in particular at the deputy chair of licensing, but after reflection and the way that post is operated, we do not feel that should have an additional allowance. Then under 8.4, you will see that we are, it is recommended that you look to continue to keep with the pay award for local government officers. We did think quite deeply about whether that was correct and whether perhaps it should be the RPI rather than the pay award, but it was decided to remain with the pay award, which of course is 2.75%. Does mean, of course, next year there won't be an increase if you decide to remain with the pay award. I personally think you should still be considering that. I'm not quite sure whether allowances should be linked to pay awards rather than to the cost of living, but that's something to consider in the future. So apart from that, I think they were the main points that we had from our review. Although I should say that the panel were very, I should say that we recommend that you review again in 12 months' time, really to see what's happened with COVID and after COVID, really. But the panel were very appreciative of the work that councillors had obviously taken during the COVID and wish to record their appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you in the panel for the work that you do on our behalf. And as I want to remind listeners and watchers that it is independent of the council and you are not sort of governed by us at all. Indeed, your last remarks, well, whatever government decides will be a matter that we will have to take into account at the time. So this is the report of the panel, and what will happen now is if we accept to put the report through to the full meeting on the 15th of December, that's where it will be. And of course, as it will be a recommendation, it can be discussed in full by all members of the council on that date. Are there any points of clarifications or questions on this? No? Then what I will do is I will put this to the vote, the recommendation to the vote, and bearing in mind it's going to the full council meeting on the 15th. Thank you, Mark. Those are the recommendations. And I would remind you that there are some changes in relation to the carers allowance, that we are recognising those people with carers, which is in number 7, which is very important indeed that we recognise those things. So if we're happy with those recommendations...
If I may interrupt, Chair, sorry,
yes.
John Street's got his hand up.
John.
Sorry, Leader, I just wanted to clarify that the appendix which is attached to the report doesn't make reference to the expanded carers allowance that is in the recommendation. I just
Right.
wanted to ensure that the two will marry up when it goes forward for the recommendation to full council.
Yes, thank you. And also just to remind everybody that the increased the recognition for the chair of the Council Housing and Development Advisory Board, that will be coming from the HRA budget. And for the Harbour Board, that will be chaired by a member. And again, if they are already in receipt of the special responsibility allowance, then obviously it's the higher amount that applies. They do not get double bubble. So on that, if that's okay with everybody, okay, is that agreed? It's agreed. Okay, thank you, Mark.
It's just to confirm that looks unanimous, Chair, so that those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you very much indeed. So it moves on to item 7,
Thank you,
which
Derek.
is, sorry?
Just saying thank you to Derek.
Yes, thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
See you again soon, mate.
Thank
This is item 7, which is the report of the corporate manager for democratic and civic support. This is the freedom of the city for Gareth Stinson. As we all know, there is the recommendation. We've already consulted with the leaders of the various groups. There is agreement amongst us all that we confer the honorary freeman of the city status on Gareth Stenson, of the Exeter Chiefs Rugby Club captain, local boy made good, and I think they've done a great job. Clearly, we will be saying more about Gareth, his career, and also the impact of the city and the benefits that we have gained as a city. Just to say, I was on a call today with the leader of Salford Council, and he mentioned our success right away today in Exeter. So we are known around the country for our success, and indeed, I hope, Europe. So I don't know if Kevin and or Andrew wishes to say anything on this point, but we will be obviously doing a little bit more on it at the full council meeting. Okay, so if that's okay and we're all in agreement with that, can I take that as agreed?
I was just going to agree. Do you want me to say anything?
Well, you can always agree with me, Andrew. You know that.
Yeah, I could try. I'm having a problem with my controls. Apologies. No, just to say, yeah, very happy for this to go to full council, and that's when the debate should be held. Correct,
Andrew. Thank you very much.
As you told me to say, yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. He's good, that man. Right. Okay, if we're all in agreement, thank you. And that's agreed, Mark. Okay. We move on to item 8, which is the overview of the General Fund Review Budget 2020 and 2021, quarter 2. There are 4 recommendations here. I'm going to defer to David Hodgson to talk us through and explain them. David.
Thank you, Chair. This is the report on the General Fund at the halfway stage of the year. I'll just quickly talk about the report and some of the changes. There's nothing significant to the overall financial position, but there are some underlying issues within it. And then I'll just talk through the comprehensive spending review and some of the key issues that came out of that, if members would like that. So in terms of the position, we're showing now a take from the working balance of £500,000, which isn't significantly different to what we said at quarter 1. However, it does mask a worsening position within the services. Services have gone from an underspend of approximately £500,000 to a projected overspend of 620,000. Virtually all of that relates to the fact of the second lockdown and the impact that's had on our income. So a substantially worse position for example, car parking. Car parking has dropped dramatically over the last 4 weeks in terms of its income. However, the government's sales fees and charges compensation scheme will offset the majority of that. So the overall position is not significantly different. What I would say is there are some areas that are struggling under budget pressures, and you as portfolio holders are as responsible for those budgets. So my request to you is that you look at your service areas and talk to your directors where there are areas of challenge to identify and challenge what may be able to be done to address some of those challenges. Some of the challenges are down to COVID related. So for example, homelessness relates to the extra action that's been taken in respect of bringing people in off the streets, partially covered by the government, but not fully. But some of them are more wide-ranging issues that need to be looked at in the long term. In section 8.1, there's a couple of requests for supplementary budgets, which are set out in Appendix 3 for members to approve and full council. So in respect of the comprehensive spending review, first of all, I'd like to point out that although the government announced a pay freeze for public sector staff, the government don't set local government pay. That's set between local government employers and the unions. And whilst it might be heavily influenced by the government's announcement, there is still the option for local government employers to go down a different path. So you may not get a zero recommendation on your members' allowances next year. Depends very much how the local government employers and trade unions conclude their negotiations. In terms of local government and the settlement we're likely to get, it was a 1-year comprehensive spending review. They put back the multi-year review to next year for understandable reasons. They have set the referendum limit for council tax at less than 2% for councils. They have not mentioned the £5 rise for districts, although we are hopeful that that will be included in the provisional settlement when that's announced in December. Just as an indication, our council tax income would reduce by £68,000 if we had to stick to the less than 2%, as opposed to a £5 increase. The sales fees and charges compensation scheme has been extended by a further 3 months to June 2021. That's good news. That provides us with an extra 3 months of a safety net to protect against losses of income as a result of the pandemic. The government announced a further 670 million nationally, not just for Exeter, unfortunately, grant to reduce council tax bills for those struggling to pay. And there is it's important to note that the finance director at MHCLG has said that these pressures will be kept under regular review to ensure that the sector has the support and resources it needs. So it appears the government will continue to review the situation and may provide further support if necessary. They've also announced a new £800 million reimbursement scheme for irrecoverable business rates and council tax in this financial year. So that should provide further support to our budget going into the next financial year. And the existing new homes bonus scheme is to continue for an additional year, although they state no new legacy payments. Need the detail really to know what the implications are, but potentially between 600 and 900,000 extra, possibly even a little bit more depending on how many new homes were delivered during this financial year. They are going to review new homes bonus with the aim of bringing a new scheme in by 22-23. And the business rates reset has been deferred, they concluded. So that's the key points from the comprehensive spending review. What that means is we have more funding coming from government, which we can build into the plans for the 21-22 budget. It does not change the long-term impacts on the medium-term financial plan. and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David, for that review and keeping us updated with the comprehensive spending review. Are there any questions or contributions, please? I open this up to the floor. No?
I'm not seeing any hands raised, Chair.
Okay. And thank you for clarifying the status of the wage negotiations. As you know, David, I find myself in a unique situation of finding myself on the employer's side of the negotiations. I believe in free collective bargaining, and I hope that the unions, on behalf of their members, will come to a fair settlement, and one that obviously, as a ruling group, we will want to make sure we can afford. I feel sure they need a pay rise. A little bit more than a clap on a Thursday night will do. Thank you on that. So if there's no further contributions, I'll move those 4 recommendations there, part of the all-in part of it, if that's okay. All right, thank you, Mark. So if that's agreed with us all, is that agreed? Yes, we've got...
That's looks unanimous, Chair.
Yes, that's unanimous, Mark, thank you. So moving on to item 9, which is another report of David's on the 2021 General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement, again for Q2, and there's one recommendation here. David.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief on this because there's no significant change from Q1. This is the capital programme at the half-year stage. So far, we've spent 15.5% of the capital programme, as opposed to 31% that was spent in the first 6 months of last year. That's understandable given the challenges of delivering capital programme during the pandemic. We've spent £10 million. There are no requests for additional information. A couple of schemes have been deferred, and there's nothing further to say, really. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, David, thank you for that. I'm looking around my screen. I can't see anybody indicating.
Councillor
Harvey.
David, did I hear you rightly say that you think that you're stating that 15% of the budget has been spent so far? If that's correct, how much, and you talked about schemes being deferred, how much would you expect to be spent throughout the year? Are schemes in place, or are there reasons why schemes that we've approved not being able to be completed? Can you give us some more information about that, please?
So in a normal year, you will find that the capital programme reduces significantly throughout the year as schemes are deferred. And I would say in any normal year, probably 50% is delivered in the year that was initially anticipated. This year, obviously, there are challenges in terms of some of the significant schemes and social distancing and trying to deliver the scheme under those circumstances, which will inevitably take longer to deliver. Most project managers are still being optimistic about delivering within the financial year. I would suggest members should possibly talk to their directors, portfolio holders, about whether that's actually achievable this year. I suspect in Q3 you will see more deferments in the capital programme. So it's not an unusual situation. Last year was quite a significant year in terms of the percentage spent. So this isn't particularly unusual, although it's slightly more understandable given the circumstances in which the capital programme is trying to be delivered.
Okay, Are there any further contributions, questions? No. If we can all those in favour of the recommendation on item 9, do I take that as agreed?
Yes.
Thank you very much, everybody. That's agreed as well unanimously.
Yes, that's carried. Yes, that's unanimous, and recommendations have been carried, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda 10. This is the 2021 HRA Budget Monitoring Report, Quarter 2. David, you're going to talk us through this. I'll give Laura a little bit of, Councillor Wright, a little bit of warning. This report also went to the Council Housing and Development Advisory Board, which we've just created. I don't want to go through that whole meeting with you, Councillor Wright, but I'd be interested just to have a few sentences about how that went in relation to receiving this report and very briefly their work. First of all, David, recommendations, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, in terms of the report, there are some changes to approve to the capital programme, but in predominantly this report, very similar to the situation outlined at quarter 1, so not a significant change, a slight increase in the underspend, but nothing significant to report in terms of the financial position, other than to say the medium-term financial plan for the HRA still plans to use the majority of their resources in terms of a ambitious capital programme. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you for that, David. Before we go to those questions, I did put you on the spot, Councillor Wright. This paper obviously went to that board for its first meeting. Very briefly, how is that all working, would you say? Good idea, bad idea?
The first meeting has gone incredibly well, Chair. Thank you for asking and giving me the chance to say so. The board is going to be very, very useful to the HRA, to the officers and to myself as well, because it's a group of people with vast experience in the housing sector, particularly the social housing sector, as well as some other areas of life that all feed into what we're trying to do here with our development programme, the way that our budget is kept healthy, and the way that we use our tenants' money to invest back in to stock and to develop more stock in the best way that a cooperative can actually function. So having the housing board up and running now is brilliant for us, because it gives another oversight, as well as the members' oversight, which we get, and scrutiny from them. It's also another arm of scrutiny, support and advice. And so far, I think everything was well received, and the board are very pleased to see the very ambitious but achievable plans that we have for bringing on board more housing stock for our residents, and being able to do that along with the retrofit programme, which is all budgeted for, and a business plan for that. So it was very exciting to be able to share it with a group of other professionals, and to have their good feedback that we seem to be on track with what we're doing for this council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wright, and I'm glad you're excited. So, not necessarily about the board, but about that report. Are there any questions? No? Thank you. And I feel sure, Councillor Wright, a topic for one of these meetings will be the placement of utility meters in people's kitchens. And you'll know you've seen the emails about that one. I didn't share it with you, Bindu, because I didn't think you needed to see it, but Laura will tell you about it. If that's all agreeable, everybody, are we happy to approve the recommendations in item 11? Sorry, item 10? Okay, so that's Mark.
That looks unanimous, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item 11, which is the Treasury Management half-year update for 2021. David Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. This is the statutory report updating Council on our performance against the Treasury Management Strategy you approved in February. I'll just highlight a couple of key points. Firstly, bank rate is at 0.1, which is making it very difficult to generate any interest on our short-term funds we have available to lend generally to other local authorities, or we use money market funds. One of the money market funds we used has now closed, and the local authorities are offering very little. Just as an observation, currently, if you place money with the government's debt management office overnight, you have to pay them for the privilege. I think it's 0.02%. You have to pay them to place your money with them. So that's the state of the economy. I will just add from the comprehensive spending review in relation to Treasury management, the government announced the outcome of their consultation into borrowing from the Public Works Loans Board. So they are effectively outlawing using the Public Works Loans Board to borrow to invest in commercial property. So councils will no longer be allowed to borrow from the Public Works Loans Board if they intend to purchase commercial property within the following 3 years. So, and the onus is on the Section 151 officer to ensure that that doesn't happen. On the plus side, they've reduced the borrowing rate by 100 basis points, by a whole 1%, back in line with the borrowing rate that the HRA enjoys. So substantially lower borrowing, but we can no longer borrow to purchase commercial property. But it's a good news. We've very rarely used it for that purpose, and always for property in Exeter that had another strategic objective for the council. So it's positive for the council and will help have a positive benefit on our future plans, notwithstanding the fact that we approved a £37 million capital programme at the last executive and council.
Good, thank you, David. Have we got any questions or contributions from the members? I can't see anybody.
I can't see any hands either, Chair.
No, so I'll put that the recommendations there is accepted. Is that okay with everybody? Are we okay? Thank you. I think we can approve that one, Mark.
Yeah, that's unanimous, Chair. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you. We're now on to item 12, which is the local tax council tax support scheme for 21-22. And here there are 2 recommendations, and I'll ask Councillor Ruth Williams to move the recommendations, and then I assume Bindu, you'll be speaking on this one. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Have we got the recommendations up? Yes, there are 2 recommendations that the executive agrees and recommends to council that the local council tax support scheme of the current year continues for 2021 to 22 without substantive changes. And the second is that the executive agrees and recommends to council that the work to develop options for members' consideration for a simpler scheme that was halted in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 response priorities will recommence in February 2021. And I'm going to ask Bindu Arjun to introduce the report.
That's exactly what I was about to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. So members will recall that Council is required to agree our local council tax scheme annually, and that of course is what's before you this evening. The existing scheme is described fully in section 8 of the report and has remained pretty much unchanged until 2017. Just a reminder to members that this scheme relates solely to working aged customers. The scheme for pensioners is set by central government, and therefore the council has no influence over this, but it accounts to about 45% of our spend on council tax support. So that is the current scheme, which is before you this evening to consider. I just want to say a bit, if I can, about the work that we'll be doing towards a proposed new scheme for the next financial year. sorry, obviously it won't be 21-22, it'll be for 22-23. So the reasons that members may recall us discussing previously that we wanted to look at a new scheme is firstly to account for reductions in funding in terms of those funds that the council gets to administer the council tax scheme. We're also looking to see how we can align our work with our digitalisation programme and allow customers to self-serve where they're able to do so, because clearly that's more convenient for customers and more cost-effective for the council. And thirdly, we'd be looking to align the scheme with other council tax discounts. As has been alluded to in the recommendations, we had hoped to start this work in time to be in place for the next financial year, but because of COVID-related workloads, as well as not wanting to provide more instability for council tax payees, we decided to recommend that the scheme stays the same for the existing, for the upcoming financial year, but that starting in February, we work alongside a members working group to help us set some principles for what a new scheme might be. That's all I wanted to say, Chair. If there were any questions, myself or Chris Buckman will be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. Just before we take any questions, is there anything you would like to add at this moment, Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. Just to point out the Section 8 of the report, which summarises the challenges that the team faced. And also, I think it's great that we've got the quality impact assessment, which will clearly present us with some very useful information. And for example, if you look at page 98, you've got the financial impact on claimants and those that are in the working age group. We had an increase of 50% of claimants there. So tremendous amount of work that's been done by the team in a very, very challenging period. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any other contributions from the floor? No.
No,
thank
no
you.
hands there.
Thank you, Bindu.
Can I just add, Chair, that I think we have to recognise the fantastic work that Bindu and her team have been carrying out, because the government has been relying on local authorities like ourselves to actually deliver support in all manner of ways, including things like the isolation support payments. We had to develop a system within sort of a week for people to be able to claim online. So the team has had to be very fleet of foot to turn their energies and expertise to doing all sorts of things to support the people, the residents and the businesses of Exeter. So I think that, you know, we have to recognise this, the fantastic work that's been done by this team in such challenging times. So
thank you, Councillor Williams. And indeed, I was going to thank Bindu and her team and apologise for Chris for making him endure the meeting so far, but thanks for coming. The fact you weren't asked to speak, there's no reflection to your position or the work that your team does. So, if we're all in favour of that recommendation, okay, there they are. If we can agree those, Mark?
Yeah, I look. Yep, it looks unanimous, Chair, that those recommendations have been carried.
Okay, thank you. That's item 12. Item 13 is the future of strategic planning within East Devon, Mid Devon, and Teignbridge District Councils and Devon County Council, formerly known as GESP. Are we allowed to mention that, Councillor Moore? I'm not sure we are. Morris. So, Councillor Morris, if you can just briefly tell us about the three recommendations, and then I will come on to Bindu to explain, hopefully, where we all are with this. Okay. Councillor Morris.
So the recommendations 2.1, that the Executive recommends to full Council that Exeter City Council formally withdraws from preparing the Greater Exeter Strategic Plan, previously referred to as the GESP. The Executive recommends that full Council support in principle the production of a joint non-statutory plan to include joint strategy and infrastructure matters for the Greater Exeter area in partnership with East Devon, Mid Devon and Teignbridge District Councils and Devon County Council. This will be subject to agreement at a later date of details of the scope of the plan, a timetable for its production, the resources required and governance arrangements. And finally, that members note the work to develop Exeter's local plan has commenced as agreed in the report to the Council on the 21st of July 2020, a report outlining the scope and timescale for the development of the local plan will be presented to members early next year.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. And I do know Councillor Ledbetter wishes to speak, and I'll come to you, Councillor Ledbetter, after Bindu. Bindu, would you like to talk to the report?
Not much to say really, Chair. I think the recommendations are fairly straightforward. I guess just to recognise that it is slightly surreal to come to this meeting asking members to agree from the withdrawal of the guest, given that the last time I was here, it was to ask members to agree to the draft consultation document, as well as to agree for resourcing for officers to contribute towards the development of the plan. But we are where we are, and just to assure members that we will obviously continue working under political direction, but alongside colleagues from the other councils to deliver on a non-statutory plan. And furthermore, again, another topic that I know that portfolio holders and members generally have been very keen to promote is that we have started in earnest working on our local plan. I'm recruiting next week towards some key posts as previously agreed by council. So we are cracking on, Chair, with our local plan and continuing to work with our neighbours in any way that we can. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bindu. We have got Catherine here if there's any detailed questions. But before I put this to the members of the executive to discuss, Councillor Ledbetter, your contribution, please. Andrew, you must believe me. We want to hear what you've got to say.
My controls.
Okay, you're with us. You're with us.
Right, sorry. Controls aren't unmuting. I think it's just some reassurance this is the start of the journey, because like a lot of these things, there are a lot of questions left unanswered. I don't quite understand if we're doing it. It's almost like a non-statutory guess we're doing. I'm just wondering why we can't try and work something around the current work that's already been carried out. An awful lot of work's already taken place. It just seems to me it seems a shame to shove a lot of that out of the way and start all over again. So that was one question, just for reassurance. I just wonder how, if it's non-statutory, will there be things like examinations, and how will the public be allowed to get involved in the preparation of this plan? I mean, will all these things come out in due course? Is this just a high-level recommendation and we'll get the details in time? That's the sort of questions I need some answers to without going on for too long.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I'll ask Bindu to address those issues and or Councillor Morse at the end of the discussion that we're about to have now. So I will come back to you, Councillor Morse and Bindu, and or Catherine, whoever's going to answer those questions. But before I do, is there anybody else on the executive who would like to make a contribution? Councillor Wood and then Councillor Fole.
I think Councillor Williams, do you have your hand as well?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, she's pixelated, but I can see that looks like a hand. Councillor Wood, Councillor Fole, and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I think quite frustrating that the guest kind of didn't go where it should go. Living on the edge of the city with a ward on the edge of the city, it's really crucial that we work with our neighbours on this, and it's a shame that they weren't able to come in and work with us. There's a lot of issues when there's developments, heavy developments, either side of a theoretical line that's drawn around Exeter as a city. So I do hope that the informal negotiations work well. And that's not me as a city councillor, that's not talking to the benefit of our partners across the border. It's actually the people that live that side of the line and this side of the line. People do need a little bit of reassurance that the way development occurs is in a strategic, thought through manner, which is what these plans are about. So I hope our colleagues across the border will engage with it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Fole.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking as the previous portfolio holder for planning, I must say that I fully endorse these recommendations. Alongside of you, Leader, and Rachel and others, I've sat through hours of monthly meetings on guests. There has always been a political will by Exeter to play ball. That political will has not been reciprocal from all our partners. And I think this is the natural parting of the ways in a formal manner. But I do believe, Andrew, that it is a new beginning, and I believe the new beginning starts with our local plan for Exeter, and we will continue to invite those other stakeholders to join with us, as Duncan emphasised.
Thank you, Councillor Fole. Councillor Williams.
I didn't have my hand up. I think I was wiping my nose and it just got left there with the pixelation, Chair.
Right, okay. Is there anybody else wiping their nose or otherwise? I'll come on to you in a moment. Emma, is there anybody else? Just to say before I bring Emma, Councillor Morse in Bindu, I think we are ourselves, with the local plan going forward, having to address as a council a number of issues when we formulate that local plan. The government have issued the white paper, although they're now talking about revising their algorithm in view of a lot of resistance from their conservative areas over the number of houses that they will be required to build. We have a vision. We have a vision, which obviously we will want to make sure that gets incorporated into our local plan, to deliver up to 12,000 homes on 8 strategic sites in Exeter. The planning algorithm gave us 12,700 over 20 years. So we were quite visionary, up with the game. But of course, we've got a big understanding to have to confront here in Exeter. We are under pressure, quite rightly, from ourselves, our children and residents in Exeter to maintain green spaces and not to build on whether it's the Topsham Gap, fields in Pinhoe, Exwick, or further in Alphington or wherever. So I take it quite simply. If people do not want us to go sideways with traditional housing of the 3 bedrooms, the 2 bedrooms and a few flats, we are clearly, as the livable Exeter vision brings about, there is only one way to go. And so we will have to go up in some of these areas. There will be a debate about that. Yes, we will want to listen to people's planning concerns, but you know, we cannot on every application fight the principle of going up, because if we don't go up, we will have to go to the sides, and we don't want to do that either. So there are some major decisions we have to take going forward. Now, I want us to work with our partners outside. We are the biggest travel to work area outside of Bristol. We're not sure whether we're the second in the country or whatever outside of London. We are quite huge, and people like to live in the countryside here and travel into Exeter. There are highways issues. There are a number of planning issues that we need to cooperate with our friends in the other councils. So that was my little bit for us to think about as we develop our local plan. So I'll come to Councillor Morse and then to you, Bindu. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. I'll try and answer some of your questions, Councillor Ledbetter, but I've got Bindu for the technicalities, because that's definitely where my planning knowledge sort of falls down a bit on the process of local plans. As you know, Exeter City Council were completely committed to the idea that we tested the GESP in public. We looked at sites, we ruled things out, we ruled things in. You're kind of talking to the wrong people about our commitment moving forwards. I think there are other local authorities that you should probably be having that chat with. Councillor Ledbetter.
I'm not questioning your commitment.
But what I was going to say is that a lot of the work that we invested in as a local authority has not ceased having any point. There's a lot of work that's been done that will transfer nicely across into the local plan now that we picked up the local plan process. Catherine Smith's on the call with us at the moment. She's been working really hard on that, and she's now working on what we can transfer from one side to the other. So that work's not been lost. I think there is a frustration for me that we're not where we'd like to be with the GESP, but I don't want you to think that all of our time was wasted in those conversations, because a lot of it will transfer. As a local authority, we still have a duty to cooperate until the white paper comes in, unless that removes it. Whether it does or doesn't, we don't know, but at the moment it looks like it will remove it. That means we have to carry on these conversations with the other local authorities, and we should do that in the most constructive way we can. And if that's an informal policy base in which we look at some of the principles of what development should look like, then I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But it's from my experience of the meetings, it's very early in the day for us to even begin to imagine what those policies look like or what they will be coming forward. And as far as the decision on how they will, link into our local plan, which will need to be consulted on, because the legislation is very clear on consultation. None of it's going to happen without proper public consultation, but I'm sure that Bindu and Catherine can fill you in on how that will work moving forward, because it is now a very different beast, and you are right about that. Bindu,
thank you, Councillor Morse. Bindu, would you like to...
Thank you, Chair. Just as Councillor Morse has already said, the work won't be wasted for sure. It will either be recycled into use for our local plan, or in fact for the new non-statutory plan that we're looking to develop with our partners. Just to assure members, it does say in the report that we will be bringing a more detailed document to you in the near future, which will outline both the timetable and the scope of the non-statutory plan. I'm going to ask Catherine if at this point she's able to say anything in terms of what consultation we'll have to do, Catherine, as well as the question about whether the non-statutory plan will have to go through an examination. Thank you.
Catherine.
Bindu, thanks. In terms of, as this will be a non-statutory plan, there won't be a requirement for it to be examined as a local plan will be, as our local plan will be by the Planning Inspectorate. It will be a matter of taking it, the final document through each council once it's been agreed, or to seek agreement. The last question was, sorry, Bindu, what was the other question?
It was consultation. What consultation will we need to do on the non-statutory plan?
Again, because it's not a statutory plan, it's almost up to us what consultation, or up to the councils what consultation we undertake. I imagine that there will be an appetite for some consultation, because it will be quite an important document. But that is something, again, that we can bring back to executive in the more detailed report at a later date.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Catherine, Bindu. So there's the three recommendations as read out by Councillor Morse. Are we happy with those recommendations? Mark, have we got approval?
Oh, apologies, Chair. Sorry, I was on mute. That is unanimous. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. I'll move on now to item 14, which is environmental health and community safety enforcement. And before I come to the officers, Councillor Bob Full, you've got two recommendations there to move.
Well, the recommendation is that executive supports the adoption of the revised enforcement policy, and that the council adopts the revised enforcement policy. And I'm going to ask Simon Lane to speak to
that's exactly what I was about to do. Simon, would you like to talk us through your paper, please?
Thank you, Chair and Portfolio Holder. This enforcement policy has been updated to reflect the changes in legislation and government guidance across a number of statutory functions that are within environmental health and community safety. In a year when legislation enforced by the service has been changing continually and is likely to change in the next few hours, it is more important than ever to have an up-to-date enforcement policy that we can use as a council. The most notable change that we have in there is the introduction of civil penalties that have been brought in under the Housing and Planning Act, which are civil penalties for up to £30,000 to tackle rogue landlords and to protect some of the most vulnerable in our society living in poor accommodation. And I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Before you do, Councillor Fole, would you like to add anything at this stage?
I'll add something at the end, if I may, Chair.
Not a problem. Thank you, Councillor Fole. Are there any comments or contributions, questions on the enforcement policy?
I wasn't sure, Chair. Did Councillor Mitchell, did you have your hand up then?
He's not moving as if he is.
Oh, no, that's fine. So
wasn't fine. Glad you're still with us, Kevin.
I'm still with you, and no, I didn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Bob, would you like, Councillor Fole, would you like to come in now?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Wood did just see a hand go up then.
Okay, then. You need to move quicker, Councillor Wood. Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I was looking at 6.2 with the policy based on 5 guiding principles: consistency, proportionality, targeting, transparency, and accountability. And these are very good principles on which to put something which has a significant stick to be able to use on rogue landlords, etc. So, because I know that when you read the newspaper, it seems that our officers often take random measures with no accountability and no notice given to people when they give out or take certain enforcement actions, which of course is not the case. And it's just good to see clearly written that there are good principles guiding this, and that the reason we're doing it is beyond question. Some of the housing quality that we ask our citizens, or our citizens have to live in, is not acceptable. And I think it's great that this is coming on the table, and we'll be able to take some actions to help some of our citizens living in the worst conditions. So very much
thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor, and if there's nobody else, then Councillor Fole.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of councillors have asked me about the phrase that starts effective implementation of the policy will also hinge on members taking a proactive and ambassadorial role within their communities where enforcement is concerned. And just to answer to that one, I think that's about us blowing our own trumpet sometimes. We have invested millions with government support in providing a roof over the head of anybody in Exeter who actually needs it. Our problem is the people who do not want to take up that offer, as well as with rogue landlords, etc. But it's the carrot and the stick that Duncan mentioned. We've offered an awful lot of carrots. I know Simon and David and I are looking at times when we actually do need to use a stick for the very tiny minority of rogue landlords or rogue rough sleepers who are aggressively begging for accommodation money when that accommodation is available. So that's the ambassadorial bit. I think is blowing our own trumpets for what we have done and recognising that sometimes we have to make some tough decisions as well.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fole. Thank you. Okay, you've seen the recommendations. Here they're just coming up on the screen, the two. I mean, okay, are we all content with this? Mark?
Yeah, that looks unanimous, Chair. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. We'll move on now to item 15. This is the report to the amendment to street trading policy in terms of reference for the licensing committee. And again, Bob, to introduce the recommendations, and then I'll come on to you, Simon. Bob, Councillor Fole.
Thank you, Chair. Where the executive is concerned, executive notes and supports the amendment to the trading policy. Secondly, that the executive supports the proposal for the following addition to the council's constitution term of reference. That is, for the licensing subcommittee to determine whether to grant or refuse a street trading consent. And I know from having spent 3 years on the full licensing committee, I think this is a streamlined and more effective way to deal with things. And let Simon speak to it.
Okay, Simon.
Yes, Chair, thank you. This is a report really that's come about at the request of the licensing committee itself. It's complicated in the fact that the policy part has to go through the licensing committee and the constitutional part has to come through executive. And then they both come back together for agreement at full council. As Councillor Fole has said, this is very much to streamline a process. At the moment, an application for a street trading consent can be rather elongated to fit in with the schedule arrangements of the full licensing committee, whereas subcommittees are held on a more frequent basis across a number of licensing remits. And it brings it more in line with what we've already got for matters such as alcohol, gambling, and taxi licensing. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I'll come back to you again in a moment. Bob, have we got any further contributions on any of this? Questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to support this, because I think we are going to see a lot of licensing requests coming through because of the change in the way things are working now because of COVID, because of the hospitality industry having to adapt, and many of them are adapting to maybe street trading and takeaways rather than having people come in and sit in a cafe. So I think this is a really good move to be able to help people locally with their change of business plans or get them up and running with ways to find alternative commercial ventures and having to adapt quickly. So we have to adapt quickly as well to enable that for the people in our city to be able to continue to work. So totally support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any further contributions? Councillor Fole, do you want to conclude?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at the moment, of course, you can wait up to 3 months for a meeting of the full licensing committee. And Laura's Councillor Wright is absolutely right when she says that this is a proactive measure in at a time when we're coming in and out of lockdown, that we can respond in a more proactive and better way. So I recommend this to you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Fole. So, Mark, the recommendations, please. There we have them, everybody. Thank you, Mark. And I'll just ask, are we all in favour of those? Mark, are we there?
That is unanimous, Chair. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. And we move on now to item 16, which is the draft resource and waste management strategy for Devon and Torbay. And I'll ask Councillor Harvey to move his recommendation, and then I'll come to David Bartram to speak to the paper. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. There's one recommendation here, and that is that the executive recommends that full council approve the draft resource and waste management strategy for Devon and Torbay for public consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll come back to you in a moment. David Bartram.
Thank you, Chair. So what you have in front of you is the draft resource and waste strategy for Devon and Torbay. And we're members of the Devon Waste Partnership. And in the process of preparing this report, all members are asked to take the report back to their respective committees and approve the plan for public consultation. So just for information, The report was approved at the partnership meeting on October the 15th, 2020, which was chaired by our own Councillor Harvey. And the strategy in general seeks to manage waste in a sustainable and cost-effective way, minimise the waste we create, to reduce the impact of waste management on the climate change, and reducing the impact on our carbon footprint, and also to maximise the value of all the the recyclable materials that we collect. What it also does is aligns the waste strategy with the expected government strategy, which is various bits of that are under consultation at the moment. I think it's the full report you can see in Appendix 1, but there's a useful summary of kind of the targets and policies on page 185. It gives a good summary. That's it really. What we're doing is really approving it for public consultation, and then any changes that are made after the public consultation exercise will be brought back and approved accordingly. Happy to answer.
Thank you, David. Councillor Harvey, do you want to come in at this stage?
I'll wait till the end if there are any questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any contributions from the floor? I've got Councillor Amal Hussain.
Yes, it was a very good report. I enjoyed reading it. That we get together as Devon and we try as much as possible to do this together, because no one local authority can do it on their own. So I quite like this report. I hope people do read it and understand the complexity of it. Yet it's absolutely necessary. And the best of luck with the consultation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Have you got anybody else who would like to speak? No. In that case, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. It's very pleasing to hear that people actually enjoyed reading a report about waste. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. That's a considerable step in the right direction. We clearly are making progress with the good people of the good residents of Devon. I think the only thing I would like to say is that we must remember that the waste hierarchy upon which underpins all of our work in waste is reduce, reuse and recycle. And that is the hierarchy. If we can reduce the amount of waste that we create, then the planet is going to benefit. Clearly, if we can recycle it, then also the planet is going to benefit. But I think of our children and our future generations to come, and it is our responsibility to ensure that we do as much as we possibly can to make sure that waste is kept to a minimum, and that waste that we do create is recycled to be reused. We had some fantastic work done by our scheme. Many of you will recall seeing the boat that came up from the Cornish area. Our guys managed to create the kayaking to bring it up to the Exeter Quay area. The recycling that we've done with creating the stage at Glastonbury. Many of you will not be aware, because although we've done our best with the comms, the fact that we use the recycling product that we create from our materials reclamation facility is recycled into the plastic bags that go into our litter bins across our city. We don't buy them in. We send our recycling product to a manufacturer who makes them for us, and then they come back to us and we use them. So I'm quite happy to say that our team are at the forefront of recycling, but that doesn't mean that we forget the hierarchy of reduce, reuse and recycle. And this public consultation document is just another step along that long and winding road. So I recommend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Okay, we've got the recommendation there. We've all seen it. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Can I have all those in favour of it? Mark, what does that look like?
That is unanimous, Chair. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Item 17, which is the review of our safeguarding policy, and before I ask, I think Melinda is going to come in on this one, but first, Ruth, to move the recommendations. Councillor Williams, to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Two recommendations here. 2.1, that executive supports the revised safeguarding policy, and 2.2, that council approves the revised safeguarding policy.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Melinda, would you like to speak to your paper, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a review of the safeguarding policy. The policy has been in place for a number of years and it was last reviewed in 2018. Most of the updates are quite general updates to structures and job titles. That said, I am aware that despite best efforts, there's still a couple of errors in there. One in terms of the name of the portfolio holder, and one in terms of the name of one of the directors. But if the approval to go to council is agreed, then I will make those changes before it goes to council. But just to say that, as with all policies, this is backed up with a substantial action plan. One of the key pieces of action we've taken recently is in terms of training, so members will be aware of that as they've been invited to general safeguarding training, but also specifically training for licensing committee. And we're also undertaking training for staff at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Melinda. Yes, just to flag up to members here and also to the any of the public that may be listening to this meeting, this is quite an important paper. It reflects the importance that all the responsibilities, that it's not just the employees of Exeter City Council, but it's also the councillors. We all have a responsibility for safeguarding, and this covers children, young people and adults. So it's just everything. So it's so important, and we all have responsibility. And I'd like to thank Melinda for the training courses that she's put on in the last couple of months. I think we had a general one for councillors at the end of September, and there was another one recently, as she said, for licensing committee members. So clearly the safeguarding team are taking their training responsibilities extremely importantly, and I'd like to thank her for that.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do we have anybody else who would like to make a contribution? Okay.
Councillor Wood, Chair.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I've attended both those training sessions, the full councillors one and the one provided for licensing committee members. Damn good training. In the policy is a range of procedures and policies that this is all linked to, and it's an extensive range. And as Councillor Williams says, this is a very crucial document and crucial policy. It's keeping both our staff, ourselves, but as importantly, our customers and residents within the city taking all of their safety very importantly. And I would just join Councillor Williams in thanking Melinda and the staff and directors for taking this work forward and making such a good job of it. I really appreciate the level of training I've had, and I can see how seriously staff take it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Is there anybody else?
I can't see any other hands.
No, neither can I. In that case, the recommendations, can I remove the recommendations? Okay, are those agreed by us all? Mark?
Those are unanimous, Chair. Those recommendations have been carried.
Thank you. And finally, we come on to item 18, which is a review of the Equality and Diversity Policy. And again, I'm going to ask Councillor Amal Hussain to move the recommendations, and then I believe Melinda will come in with some detail after that. Councillor Hussain.
The recommendation, thank you, Chair. The recommendations are that the executive supports the revised Equality and Diversity Policy, and that the council approves the revised Equality and Diversity Policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gussain. Okay, Melinda, would you like to talk to the paper? And then we have got somebody speaking, Councillor Trish Oliver. And Councillor Oliver, I'll call you after Melinda has spoken. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you, Chair. So just briefly, again, this is a revised policy. The policy has been in place for a number of years, but was last reviewed in 2018. So the main changes to this are again around structures, around job titles, and so on and so forth, just to make sure that it is absolutely current. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Councillor Oliver, if you'd like to make a statement, please.
Yes, I would. Thank you. I support the recommendation. Some important work has been done this year. Exeter City Council has provided over £320,000 worth of disabled facilities grants, including supplying 60 stair lifts. I've got confidence in the work of our officers and their commitment to equality and diversity. I'm particularly heartened by the work done on equality impact assessments, which Councillor Williams referred to one earlier. And thanks are due to Melinda for her zeal and competence in this area. As with the safeguarding policy, each Exeter City Council has the personal responsibility to comply with equality and diversity policy. Point 1.7 of the corporate plan addresses this. Training for members and staff is being planned. The tragic and appalling death of George Floyd earlier this year reminds us of the need to constantly question our own embedded prejudices, and I welcome the opportunity to examine my own through attending this training. In line with the Equality Act, equality and diversity policies usually offer protections to people with one of 9 protected characteristics: age, disability, gender, gender reassignment, sexual orientation, marriage or civil partnership, pregnancy or maternity, race, and religion or belief. Exeter's policy is exceptional in that it extends these protections to people's socio-economic background. Whilst this, in my mind, has always made Exeter's policy an exemplar, now, in the time of COVID, it could not be more relevant. Increasing numbers of people are sliding down the socio-economic scale at a rate of knots. We're all going to have to help each other and share our accident of privilege or good fortune. I'm confident in the direction of both our leaders, Phil and Kareem, to lead on this in line with Exeter's vision that no one is left behind. Now is the time for us to work cross-party in collaboration for an Exeter where everyone has equal opportunities and is protected from discrimination. Let Exeter be an exemplar and lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Okay, Councillor Gussain, would you like to add anything at this stage?
No, I would just like to repeat what Councillor Oliver said and thank Melinda and the other officers who did this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have we got any councillor who'd like to make a contribution on this?
I can't see any hands raised, Chair.
Okay, so we got the recommendations there, Mark. And those are the 2 recommendations. And okay, Mark, thank you. Can I have that moved and accepted? Okay, thank you.
That is unanimous, Chair, that those recommendations have been carried.
Well, thank you, everybody. That concludes the agenda. Hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. I'm off to find out where I can buy a COVID-safe Scotch egg tomorrow. And so have a good time and enjoy yourselves and keep safe over the coming weeks. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep, thank you.